Advice on attaining enlightenment at the moment of death. The king prostrated himself and made circumambulations around Padmasambhava. Then he asked the master, "Great master, I am a king of little faith, but of great wealth and fame, and am surrounded by ministers who are opposed and hostile to the Dharma. I am not a good person, but rather evil. I am fond of diversions and enjoyments, and not spiritual in the least. I am only keen on the things of this life, and do not even fear the prospect of going to the lower realms in the next life. Please take pity on me. I beg you to bestow upon me an instruction for attaining enlightenment at the time of death." After saying this, he bowed his head with great devotion and wept. The master considered him, and extracting his most essential advice, bestowed the following: "It is most wonderful that you have faith felt from the bottom of your heart. Your Majesty, do not be fearful of the time of death. I have an instruction for the short path of secret mantra, by which even a great sinner can attain enlightenment before others. It is an instruction for avoiding the Bardo. So listen here, Your Majesty. First we entered the womb due to the incidents of our unknowing, and by the power of karma. Next, we remain for a short time on this earth. In the end, we will die, and this body will lie on the ground, while the mind travels on by the force of karma. The mind will assume another body among the 6 classes of beings, and so continue to roam samsara. Even if we succeed in living out a full life of 100 years, we spend half of it by sleeping at night like a corpse. While dreaming, we undergo a multitude of joys and sorrows. So at best, our waking hours add up to no more than 50 years. Before we took birth from our mother, death was our natural possession. Yet even so, people don't remember their death and engage in the various actions of passion and aggression, as if they were immortal. Death does not come at an announced time. When it will befall you is not certain. There are many ways to die, so the day will come when death is unavoidable. Listen here, Your Majesty. There are 3 ways to die: superior, middling, and inferior. To die like a king is when someone like you dies, still attached to his domain and possessions. That is the inferior way to die. At the moment of death, be free from attachment. To die like a beggar is to die without the slightest attachment to goods and utensils. That is the middling way to die. There is also the way known as dying like a mountain deer. To die in solitude, utterly free of even the notion of attachment or clinging, is the foremost way to die. Listen here, Your Majesty. At the time of death, there are 3 ways to attain enlightenment. The person of lesser capacity has gathered the accumulations of merit and wisdom and attains enlightenment in the following life. The person of medium capacity has become familiar with the training and attains enlightenment in the Bardo. The person of the foremost capacity has gained realization and awakens to enlightenment without going through the Bardo. This specific instruction is for attaining enlightenment without going through the Bardo. It is the short path of secret mantra. I will teach you this root instruction in 3 points. Resolve the root of the identity of all outer perceived objects to be the identity of space. Thus, you empty the outer 6 worlds and are free from the root of a birthplace among the 6 classes of beings. Resolve the root of the identity of the inner perceiver to be the identity of empty and cognizant mind. Thus, you empty the womb doors of the inner contents of beings and are free from the root of every type of rebirth. Resolve the root of phenomena by realizing that ignorance never arose. Thus, you will be free from the root of good and evil. This was the instruction in 3 points. The king asked, "Great Master, how do I resolve the root of the outer perceived objects to be the identity of space?" How do I become free from the root of a birthplace among the 6 classes in the outer vessel-like world? The Master replied, "Your Majesty, listen here. What does outer perceived objects refer to? The present appearances include 10 million times 1 billion worlds of Mount Sumeru with 4 continents. In our experience, they are seen as earth and the stones, mountains and rocks, trees, plants and forests. They belong to the mistaken perceptions of unrealized beings. The scripture of the embodiment of the realization mentions, even the sole identity of a thing can be seen in 6 mistaken and 1 true way. The erroneous are of 2 kinds. Take, for example, water. Gods see it as nectar, demigods as weaponry, humans as water, animals as drink, hungry ghosts as rotten pus and blood, and hell beings as boiling liquid copper. In reality, it is none of these. Thus, there are 6 mistaken views. Two perspectives are to be regarded as erroneous. Eternalistic extremists claim that cause and effect are both permanent, so that a man who dies is reborn a man, a horse again as a horse, and so forth. The nihilistic extremists allege that the body is assimilated into the 4 elements, and that mind is assimilated into space, that present events are inconsequential, and that there is no rebirth after dying. Both of these are erroneous conceptions. Well then, What is the actual case? It is that phenomena are nothing whatsoever and totally free of anything to be held in mind. As for these present appearances of stones and rocks, mountains and forests, trees and plants, and so forth, do not believe them to be anything at all, and do not assert them to be anything at all. Do not deny what appears, and do not assert them to be or not to be. Their appearance is a natural appearance, and their emptiness is a natural emptiness. Like the identity of space, let their identity be naturally empty. And let their appearance be devoid of a self-nature. When you don't apprehend the appearance of these objects, you give rise to neither clinging nor attachment. Thus, you cut through the root of the outer vessel-like world. Being free of rebirth within the 6 classes of beings, you have emptied the 6 causes. Why is that? It is because the experience of the 6 classes of beings is a delusion. Being free of this delusion, the appearance of their objects will be nowhere to see. The king asked, "What is meant by resolving the root of the inner perceiving mind as the identity of empty cognizance?" The master replied, "Your Majesty, listen here. Having resolved that the root of the inner perceiving mind is empty cognizance, and having emptied the womb door for the mind within, is known as being free from the root of rebirth. What is meant by inner perceiving mind? It includes the mind within, parents and companions, siblings and offspring, enemies and friends. Well then, what is the perceiver itself? It is the mind endowed with emotions. When resolving what it is, this mind cannot be proved to be anything whatsoever. nor is it a complete nothingness. When not realized, this all-doing mind causes you disaster. When this mind, the thinker of disruptive thoughts, is realized and resolved, it is an unconfined cognizance. This is known as realizing mind essence. That it cannot be proved to be anything whatsoever is known as Dharmadhatu, the basic space of all things. Though cognizant, it is a cognizance that is unconfined. Though perceiving, it is an emptiness that cannot be proved to be anything whatsoever. When you don't apprehend perceived objects as father or mother, you have exhausted clinging as the cause and attachment as the condition. Thus, you have no fear of rebirth through the womb doors of the 6 classes of beings. The king asked, "It is necessary to realize the non-arising of ignorance. What is meant by non-arising?" The master replied, "To know that mind essence cannot be proved to have any identity whatsoever, and is totally free of constructed attributes, is called knowing arising as knowledge." This is also called recognizing oneself by oneself. This is also called realizing the truth of non-arising. In fact, it is to be resolved about your true essence. Thus, you are free from the karmic phenomena of good and evil. No matter how much good you have created, you are free of hoping for the result of Buddhahood. And no matter how much evil you have done, you are free from fear of the lower realms and the hells. In that realization, there is neither karma nor the ripening of karma. This is not a fantasy, a belief, or a fabrication. It is affirmed in all the noble proclamations, as in the extensive Prajna Paramita. In that empty nature of all phenomena, there is neither karma nor ripening of karma. Furthermore, the 150 modes states, just as the bright red lotus flower is untainted by any impurity, the empty nature of all things remains untainted by the defects of karma. The Great Expanse mentions, if it is subject to karma, it is not the self-existing wisdom. The Vajra Meru Mansion states, self is devoid of self. Other is devoid of other. The both is devoid of both. The neither, too, is devoid of neither. The neither is devoid of boundlessness. This is because they are untrue and mentally fabricated. This being so, when you recognize that everything is your mind's delusion, you have resolved the nature of things and are free from the root of good and evil. The king asked, Great Master, how do I awaken to enlightenment at the time of death without going through the Bardo? The master replied, Your Majesty, listen here. The yogi of highest mental acumen does not apprehend outer perceived objects. Therefore, they cut through misconceptions about appearances and, letting appearances dissolve in themselves, they experience no perceived objects in the Bardo. Thus, an outer vessel-like world does not arise. As inner perceiving mind has no identity that can be proved in any way whatsoever, samsara dissolves in itself. Having no mental body in the Bardo, the womb doors to the 6 classes of beings are emptied. Being free from causes for rebirth, dharmata dissolves in itself. When this yogi leaves the body, they meet with the space of awareness. For them, the propelling force of good or evil actions is exhausted. The king asked, "Great Master, how does the fruition of the three kayas manifest for such a yogi?" The master replied, "Since the ground of Dharmata lies beyond the domain of words and descriptions, the space-like continuity that is no thing whatsoever is named the fruition of Dharmakaya. Out of this space-like continuity that is Dharmakaya, the cloud-like Sambhogakayas appear, adorned with the major and minor marks within the experience of bodhisattvas on the 10 levels. Like rain, the Nirmanakayas benefit whoever needs to be inspired in whichever way is necessary by means of boundless emanations. The Hidden Essence Tantra mentions this. Within the continuity of the empty sky, they take shape like rain clouds by showering down as rain. They nurture the greenery and forests. Likewise, from the inconceivable Dharmakaya, the domain realized by the 3 yogas, appear the Sambhogakayas, the domain of the bodhisattvas of the greater vehicle. From there appear the Nirmanakayas, the domain of all fortunate beings. This is the way in which the fruition of the 3 kayas manifests. The master concluded with this instruction to the king. "Your Majesty, understand this. There is no time to squander. Train in experiencing this profound nature of Dharmata. Even though you understand the profound meaning, Do not stop performing conditioned virtuous deeds. Give whatever you do the seal of holding no concepts. If you reveal this teaching to others, it will become a basis for misconceptions. So do not propagate it, but conceal it as a terma. At the end of this age, King, you will meet with it again. Thus, Padmasambhava sealed this with his spoken command. The king was overjoyed, and at that very time, his awareness was liberated into its natural state. He was overwhelmed by gratitude to the Master. This was the short path of secret mantra, the instruction for a great sinner to awaken to enlightenment before others.